Hey, what's up, you guys? We're live. We're live again this Sunday. It's the Wolf of Young Street live. So today, I'm going to talk about the budget votes. There'll be there'll be a vote held on the budget 2025, Mark Carney's first budget on Monday, and it'll be obviously I expect that budget to pass, but that's we're going to talk about the information, the additional information we now have from the Parliamentary Budget Office. Also, before today is done, we're going to talk about this emerging cult that I'm seeing around Mark Carney. This emerging cult of people around Mark Carney. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go on with the show today. And if there is time, we're going to talk about Donald Trump as well and his tackle his pullback on some tariffs that he put on food, and he has pulled back some of these tariffs in a bid to make food more affordable for people. What could this mean for the future of tariffs? What does this change for Canada? We'll get into that if there is time on the show today. But before we get going, I want to know who's live with me today. Say hello in the comments. You guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. So today, here's where I want to start. Here's where I want to start. As you guys come in, just say hello to me. But I'm not gonna. Let's not dally here. Let's get started. Today, I want to show you guys. The Parliamentary Budget Office released their analysis of Mark Carney's budget this week and end of last week. I want to say. And the Parliamentary Budget Officer has been talking to CTV. So I'm gonna show you parts of that interview with CTV right now, very soon. But there are interesting parts of that I want to come back and debrief with you guys. But let's go there first. How about that? Let's go there first. I will show you. Let's see if I can share this. Yeah. Yep. Don't worry. You're seeing me you're seeing me probably three times right now, but I'm just trying to set up what I want to show you. So here's the parliamentary budget officer talking to Vashi Kapelos of CTV. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've already. I think you've seen most of what I wanted to show you there. They get into some other, a bit of back and forth on some other. Oh, you guys could not hear that, could you? Oh no. All right. I just I just realized I played you all that and nobody could hear that. Oh, that sucks. All right, I'm gonna let's try that again. That is so stupid. Let's try that again. Okay. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go back there and let's see if I can play you the. Wow. See, this is what happens when I'm doing these shows, and basically when there's nobody in the audience, I don't know whether you can hear me or not, and so I proceed to show you something. Anyways, no need for me to show you that again, actually. But here's what I wanted to say. The parliamentary budget officer, just to summarize what that interview was, the parliamentary budget officer said that amongst the things that the colony government is selling with this budget, they say that the operating side of the budget will be balanced by 2028-29. That is part of the promise that Mark Carney is making in his 2025 budget. However, the parliamentary budget officer is in the parliamentary budget office in their report is coming out and saying that, well, the government is being, well, maybe overly optimistic in that, and also that their categorization of what capital expenses is, or some of you might remember that Makani has sort of changed the way the budget is arranged at the moment. There's a division right now into an operating and a capital side, right? And the big concern, and this is something I've voiced a lot on this particular show, it's the fact that, well, what is the capital investment? How do you define this? And I think that this division of the budget, while it is useful for long-term planning, it does leave room for sometimes for unaccountability on the part of the government in terms of their spending. Because what can happen is that the government will, as the parliamentary budget officer is basically suggesting here, the government might punt certain operating expenses under like capital expenses, and essentially not be accountable for a lot of the spending that they do end up incurring, right? And so the parliamentary budget officer here goes on to show in their report that actually, while Makani is telling you that he is going to get the operating side of the budget to be balanced by 2028-29, if you use their definition, the parliamentary budget officer's understanding of what capital investments should be, then the operating side of the budget actually will not be balanced at all. The operating side of the budget will not will it will decline. While it will decline every year from 2026 all the way to 2029, 2030, it will not be balanced as Makani has promised in the in the 2025 budget. Makani promised that in the 2020 in the budget by 2028-29 the operating side of the budget will be balanced. However, the parliamentary budget officer is arguing here that essentially the government has included certain things as capital expenses, which are as capital investments, but those don't necessarily qualify as capital investments. That definition, they disagree. That some of those things they are defining slightly differently. Hey, who's watching right now? If you guys say hello to me, say hello to me. And apologies if you're not watching live, because I played you the interview with the parliamentary budget officer, and then I realized later on that the that the video, actually the sound was not working. But obviously, when I'm live like this and I'm doing a solo live run, and there's nobody to tell me that, I can't necessarily tell. So apologies for that if you're not watching live, but that's what happened. So but this is important. This statement by the parliamentary budget officer Jason Jakes is important because, I mean, obviously there's the final budget vote is tomorrow. Tomorrow on Monday. I expect the budget to fly through. I expect the budget to pass. However, the government has changed certain things that we've come to expect on the budget, right? And that we've come to expect over the last few years to a decade, where Justin Trudeau committed to a declining debt to GDP. Makani in his budget is effectively saying that the debt to GDP will remain flat over the next 5 years, right? And instead they're anchoring themselves on a deficit to GDP, on a declining deficit to GDP, which is a different metric, right? But that hello, who's watching right now? Say hello to me in the comments. You guys jump in the comments. I was just I was just getting through the parliamentary budget officer's review of Makani's budget 2025. So now I want to talk about this emerging toxic cult that I think is starting to surround Makani at the moment. I'll tell you this. As a person who likes to who hosts a politically neutral podcast, I'm starting to notice something, and you tell me if you've noticed this too. In certain conversations, if you criticize, if you're somebody that critiques Mark Carney, as I do sometimes, I found that there are certain people in the audience that will that basically believe that because of Mark Carney's qualifications, because of Mark Carney's experience, that he is beyond critique. I'm not saying Mark Carney himself has said that, but I'm saying there's a forming cult around him that seems to be deifying Mark Carney. And I'll give you an example. I had a person comment. I'm not going to call the person out because I understand where the person is coming from. But this person says, so obviously I did a live show on Thursday about the nation building projects that Mark Carney announced. And I was saying that, well, Pierre Poilievre is right, because these projects that Mark Carney is announcing as nation building projects are not new. And Pierre Poilievre gave a great example of one of these projects. The Season Mine was announced in 2017. It was said at the time that this project will get expedited, it will get built in no time. Never eventually came to fruition. All these years later, Mark Carney is re-announcing these projects. It is worth asking the questions about what is different this time about these nation-building projects that Mark Carney is announcing. It is worth asking the questions, right? And so you ask the questions, and obviously on that particular video I got this particular comment. So this person says, of course they're not new. Carney is helping important projects go ahead. The project is the largest untapped tungsten deposit in the world. I personally don't want any rush to spend tax money. PP has no plan. It is important to grow, learn some economics, and we are now under attack in it. And anyways, so this person, this is how. Okay, so Dave says if you don't, your economy is finished. Rules are created, rules are bent. Okay. Dave also says policy and procedures are changed and success is rarely seen in a straight line. Okay, so I want to talk about that, right? And this is why I say we need to be. I am trying to. I think you need to be careful about this. I say toxic cult. That is what I am calling them. That is emerging around Mark Carney. Because, as I said, a lot of these projects Mark Carney has announced are not new. They're not new, right? Now, I'm not saying that we should be Canada should be working on new projects right now. What I am saying is that I can agree with the strategy to try and get projects over the line, right? But what is different right now? What is different? Why do these announcements of these new nation building projects by Marconi, how are they any different, right? Because what Marconi is essentially doing, and I said this on Thursday during the live show, when Mark Carney recommends these projects to the major projects office, all he is doing is referring it to an office, right? It doesn't mean that these projects are approved. It doesn't even mean that it'll get built or funded. So what is the point, right? It is worth asking these questions. And what I will tell you, the two major characteristics I've seen around this cult surrounding Marconi. I call them a cult because when people follow a certain personality without any idea as to, like, you got to ask some questions, right? If someone is re-announcing projects that were some of them already in construction, you got to ask some questions. Okay, what is going on here? How will we know that what you're doing is working, right? And how will we know if Marconi's approach to these nation building projects is actually working? Well, because these projects are so large, you're not going to be able to tell in the next year or two, right? Which is the part that worries me the most, because if with projects that are like small or maybe easy to do, within a year or two you can say, oh, McCartney's succeeding, he's doing this, he's creating the jobs that will come from this, Canada's GDP is growing based on the returns from these projects. But these projects that McCartney is announcing are big projects, right? Over time it will probably be, some of these projects will not be delivered for the next 5 to 10 years maybe, right? And and the thing is, this is, sure, you can say, yeah, this is an attempt by McCartney to stimulate the economy. True, right? However, you it you for you if you have to wait 5 to 6 years to find out that, well, McCartney's approach is not actually doing anything. It's not actually working. It's not creating the jobs we think it will. Or these projects didn't actually even get completed. Well, you wait for the next guy to re-announce the same project again, right? So I think that there's a growing group of people on the internet that I see on the internet, certainly sometimes in my comments, that say, why would you ever? Okay, so Dave says our resources are tied. If we don't sell our goods, our economy will shrink. No, I don't get me wrong, Dave. I agree that these projects are necessary. What I'm saying to you is that these projects are not new. Now, if these projects didn't go on in 2017, and McCartney is re-announcing these projects now with the interest of punching them through the end zone, well, what is different now apart from the major projects office, which some people would argue is just another separate bureaucracy. What is different now that will make these projects get built? Okay, so Dave, you're saying that these projects are new. Well, I'll give you an example. The Season Mine was announced in 2017. It is not new. Yeah? Some of these projects, you say they're new. Well, a lot of them are already under construction. Okay, you're talking in particular about the okay, so the Crawford project is a nickel mine. It's not a lithium mine, but I get your point. Canada has a vast resource of, I was talking about the Season Mine, Dave. So the season mine is a tungsten and molybdenum mine, in New Brunswick, I want to say. BB says, so you expect the projects to be magically completed with a magic wand. You're not listening to my point. My point here to you is that it will take 5 to 6 years for these projects to be completed. Okay? It will take 5 to 6 years for these projects to be completed. And Mark Carney's making these announcements. We're all getting excited about these announcements. But I think it is worth critiquing and asking the questions: what is really different? What is really different this time? Because, as I said, some of these projects are being reannounced. They're not new. They're not new. Like the small modular reactor project, we knew was happening before Mark Carney announced it. The whole goal of making them projects of national interest is to speed up their delivery, right? And so, okay, so Dave says they already announced budget tomorrow. Yes, but 10,000 workers to build it during. Okay, right? Yes, 10,000 workers to build it during. I think you guys are getting me wrong. Okay, you guys are getting you. Some of you, I think, Dave. I think I'm finally starting to understand. And yeah, Dave, you are exactly right. Shovels in the ground is one of the ways we will know if this is working. Shovels in the ground is one of the ways we will know. If the jobs start to materialize, that is one of the ways we will know, right? If projects start to actually come online, that's one of the ways we will know. But I am saying that I think it is toxic. I think it is toxic when you essentially assume that these projects, you just, without really much credence, without much proof, when you assume that these projects are gonna get completed, when really, as I said, they're just being reannounced, right? What is different this time is the question I'm asking you. So BB says, okay, so I'm struggling to follow your train of thought, BB. So you help me out and put it together in as a paragraph, so I'm not just debating you over a piece of your thought that is perhaps incomplete. I All right, BB. I already told you the proof I want to see. The proof I want to see is projects actually getting completed. Dave rightly said jobs. Dave also said projects actually getting constructed. Those are the pieces of evidence I want to see with these projects, not announcements, not referrals to the major projects office. Now, I want to get back, as I said, to this toxic cult that I say is around Mark Carney. There are certain people, I think, that believe that because Mark Carney is an economist, that means that we don't have a right to ask questions. When you see a deficit as high as $78 billion, as we saw in this particular budget, you're right to ask questions. I think it is important that we ask questions. Whether you agree with the decision to spend that money as it is being spent right now or not, that is a different argument, right? But you should be able to ask questions in terms of, yeah, governments have spent money before to that, and this spending has not necessarily improved. Well, Obviously, over the decade of Justin Trudeau, we saw some of the lowest GDP growth ever, right? We saw under Justin Trudeau that spending didn't necessarily translate into improvements in the lives of the people. And so when it is important to ask questions like when you see a deficit of $78 billion, you should be able to ask questions. You should not be like, oh, because Mark Carney is an economist, he is beyond critique. So BB says, he says, you are upset that they announced a project that isn't fully on the way or fully completed. You say that it is a photo op, so you don't want to hear about any project until there is a shovel. How about this? I would like to, here's what I would prefer to hear. I would prefer to hear of a project when it is fully approved and I know it is going to go all the way through. That is what I would like to hear. I would prefer if I'm not hearing about a project getting sent to an office. That is what I would prefer. Because then I would prefer to have something. I would prefer to have something concrete, like okay, it's actually under construction. Something tangible is changing about these projects. That is what I would like to see, not a referral to an office. Because as I said, these projects right now are being referred to the major projects office. It doesn't even mean that they're going to get built. And you'll see that with the LNG project, with the Silisms project, you're seeing now that that particular project is facing two legal challenges from First Nations. So what was the point of the announcement? What was the point of the announcement? Right? If projects continue to get stuck in court, if projects continue to get delayed, and I mean, we would have lost this moment that we're in right now, a moment that calls for big projects to be delivered. If, for example, if the Silisms project is stuck in court for the next 5 years and it never gets constructed for the next 5 years, by 10 years' time, when if it ever gets resolved, we would have lost this moment. So that is my point to you. It's not about naming a whole bunch of fancy projects. It is about actually getting these projects built and serving Canadians. If you understand my point. And so what I think it is worth, whether you agree with Mark Carney or not, it is worth asking the questions. What is different this time? What is really different this time? Why do we think these projects will actually get built this time as against the other times that some projects have been announced and abandoned? Simple question. Whether you're able to convince yourself that you believe that the framework of the major projects office is so different that it would actually ensure that projects actually get built. That's a totally different argument. You've convinced yourself that you believe in the new framework. But the question has to be asked. That is all I am saying. And so there are people, I think, within this toxic cult, as I say, of Mark Carney, maybe through no fault of his own. There are people in this toxic cult of Mark Carney that believe that because he's an economist, you cannot question some of the decisions that he's making. You cannot question some of the moves that are being made. And I think that is absolute rubbish. I think that is absolutely rubbish. But I want to catch up with your comments actually because you guys are pretty chatty. So actually BB and Dave are giving me a whole eyeful here. So what is Dave saying? So BB says, so when you don't hear anything, you're left to build things in your mind about what actually is happening. Oh, okay. You're saying if BB saying, is it not worse if they don't announce stuff and then people go on and people like me, he's trying to say, go on and construct their certain things in our heads, and then and isn't that inherently worse? As I've said, I have seen too many projects in this country get announced and never actually move to completion. I would like when the prime minister makes an announcement for us to have an idea if that project is even going to get constructed. Otherwise, what is the point of these announcements? That is all I am saying. So, like when the prime minister makes an announcement, I want to know that these projects are actually going to move forward. Otherwise, as I said, what is the point? Like if the whole idea is to figure out, oh, it's like the federal government saying it's going to sign an MOU with the Alberta government over a pipeline. I don't know, is the pipeline going to get built or is it not going to get built? What is this MOU? Right now, I want to know if if a pipeline is something that we consider to be useful for our country going forward, and if it's not, let's move ahead, and deal with the fallout from there. But don't don't cover it up in a whole bunch of fluff and for a project that is never actually going to get built. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, I'm going to catch up with your comments. Dave says all indigenous 50-50 partnership. I'm not really sure which project you're referring to, but if you're talking about the Silism's LNG project, it's actually not 50-50 LNG. It's not 50-50 indigenous. That project is actually owned by an American company, which is something I actually want to talk about. So one of the things that Mark Carney has talked about is that, well, we're going to focus on the buy Canadian policy. Yeah. Well, the Silism's project, guess what? It is owned by an American company. Western LNG is the name of that company, and the steel and the steel that will be used for the cryogenic tanks or whatever for the LNG are going to be imported from Korea or China, right? Presumably because those particular materials are not made. I don't know at the scale we need for this project in Canada. Well, my whole thing about this particular Silism's project then is okay. So if it is not owned by a Canadian company, so essentially the profits, barring like corporate taxes, the profits are basically going to the United States. The 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 steel, well, it's not being bought from Canadian companies, so we don't get the benefit that way. How is this a nation building project? How is this nation building, right? So that's a fundamental question I had with the Silesions project. As I said, you have to be able to ask questions. You can't just sit there and be like, oh, in Carney we trust. That is not critical. That is not critical reasoning at all, right? And also, I'll tell you this: people saying that Polyev has no plan is a response to you questioning Marconi. Well, that is also a shit argument. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so what are people saying? Actually, whoa, I've missed so many of your comments. So I want to catch up on all your comments. Uh, let's catch up on the comments. I apologize, guys. I've been slacking on the comments today. Um, okay, I'm not sure why you're talking about Frontier Lithium. I'm not sure why you're talking about Frontier Lithium. Maybe I'll do a little bit more research about what you're saying there. We can have a bit of a better discussion, Dave. Um, so BB says so. No announcements for 10 years. No, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I don't disagree with McCartney trying to punt projects that are already in construction over the line to get them over the line. I can agree with that, right? So if you're going to prioritize these projects, okay, I can agree with that. Go out, do the work to cut the regulatory hurdles to get these projects over the line. If you're gonna sit there and make these announcements about, but what I want to see is concrete announcements like, okay, we've cleared the hurdles and this particular project is getting completed. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear we're sending it to this office so that they can consider the hurdles that need to be removed for the project to get completed. But maybe the company that owns that particular project is going to decide eventually we're not going to do it. Okay, so what was the point of your announcement? That is my point to you, BB. Um, so Dave says Trump taking the auto industry away from Canada. It's an eruption. Canada needs jobs. That it does. Canada does need jobs. And that is why it is more important than photo ops. It is more important that we know that these projects are actually going to get built, that they are actually going to get the approvals, that they will get the designation as project of national interest, and they will move at the speeds that Mark Carney is promised, that Mark Carney promised, right? If they're not going to do any of that and they're going to get stuck in court like the Silesians project might be, because it's being challenged, as I said, by some First Nations, then we've lost the plot. Okay, that is my argument here. R says, I would love if this announcement of projects have a concrete timeline when they will be completed. To answer your question, nothing is different. These projects will be delayed or abandoned or dot dot dot. Okay, yeah. I, to be fair, I think they have a timeline. I think their timeline is probably to get as many projects completed as possible in the next 5 to 6 years. I think that is the goal. Now, whether they will achieve that timeline or not, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that less and less of our nation building projects are going to get tied up in court. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that these projects are actually going to be completed. Dave says, if your country doesn't have money, what happens to your country? Yeah, if your country doesn't have money, your country takes more money from you, because the country doesn't actually have any money. It just takes money from its citizens, right? So if your country runs out of money, it just takes more money from you as taxes, unfortunately. BB says, but how many projects have you seen get completed? That's what you're not concentrating on. You're just trying to be negative to be negative. No, I'm not. I'm not trying to be, as I said, I'm giving these projects the benefit of the doubt. The same way I'm giving the budget the benefit of the doubt, right? But as I said, what evidence do you have that this government is better at spending than the Trudeau government was? None, right? So until this government shows me something, something that convinces me that they are better at spending than the last Liberal governments. I say Liberal governments because that's my experience of those are the two governments I've paid most attention to. Okay, not because Harper didn't have his things. Anyways, uh, yeah. So Dave says the First Nations need to agree. The First Nations need to agree. Yes, and again, that is part of the problem. That's one of the problems I'm saying, right? All these agreements are not for the Silesians project. It would appear that all the agreements for these projects to actually move ahead are not in place. So again, what are we announcing if you don't have the agreements you need in order for the project to proceed smoothly? What are these announcements? BB says, so do you want to talk about the pipeline, even though it is not 100%? Oh, BB says, so do you want to talk about the pipeline, even though it is not 100% certain? Do you want to see the transparency on the talks and the plans or not? Okay, sure, sure. Let's talk about, we can talk, sure, let's talk about the pipeline. But as of now, that project of the pipeline has not been recommended to the major projects office. But if it was, again, all that achieves when it is recommended to the project's office is just optics, right? Because that project then needs to get First Nations approval to go through whatever territories it has to go through. It has to get funding, which presumably a lot of these projects barring the ones that are already under construction. A lot of these projects don't even have that at this moment. It has to actually be constructed in order to in order to actually help Canadians, if you understand my point. So yes, we can have all the discussions we want till we're blue in the face, but discussions don't put food on the table. Anyways, uh so I'm not just trying to be negative, BB. That's my point. Let's see. Braveheart says, answer to your question is, if we don't know if it will be completed, then there is no assurance that these projects will be done. It's profitability. The main media needs to ask these crucial questions. Good. And BB says, and you have that information about the steel because of an announcement. Should they have held that announcement until they finish making everything? Okay, so BB, I have the information about this the Silesions project using steel from abroad, because that question was asked to Mark Carney during his presentation of the second tranche of nation building projects. It was asked to him, and you can go back. I think that was where I saw it. You can go back and watch his response to that question. And Marconi's justification for designating a project that is not owned by a Canadian company that will use foreign steel was that, well, there is a pipeline that will supply the LNG to that particular facility, and that needs to be built, and so there will be jobs in the construction of the infrastructure around the Silesions facility. That was McCartney's announcement to that. That was McCartney's answer when he was asked about that, right? So maybe the infrastructure there ends up being worth the designation of nation building for this particular project. Maybe it ends up being worth it as financially to this country. Well, we don't know that yet. Okay, or I'm sure they've costed it, or if it proceeds, they will cost it out and see if it actually makes sense. So that's where I got the steel argument from. Okay, so Dave O1 said it's the jobs associated with it. Dave O1 says, do your homework. Okay. BB says, so you don't want transparency and to know the process. Okay. You just want the final project completed without announcement. I want announcements. Again, I'll repeat myself. I want announcements when I know the projects are actually going to happen, not referring them to an office that will harmonize regulations and tell the company, oh, this is what you need to do in order for the project to go ahead. I want to know when these projects are actually have the feasibility of getting done. That is what I want to know, because as I said, your announcements don't feed people's families. Your announcements do not create jobs. Okay? That is the point where I am interested in these projects. I am not interested in the announcements. I am interested in knowing that if we can say that all these projects McCartney has announced are actually going to get constructed, then maybe it was worth the announcement. Maybe it was worth the announcement. So Dave, okay, so BB is accusing me here of saying, so your default position is the Justin Trudeau government. Do you see your okay? I'm not really sure what you mean. Maybe clarify for me here. Dave Owen says, do you know that there are 2 battery plants being built? Coincidentally, I'm some of you might know this, but I am a scientist by trade, and I do work in the battery industry. And yes, there are battery plants being built. So yes, we know that. But I'm not sure why you bring that up. We can maybe give me more information there. The indigenous are having discussions of their own. Okay. By the way, there is a natural gas line running across Canada already. They will build an extension in Quebec to get it to the east coast. The Silesia project is in BC. No. Okay. BB says you missed the point of my pipeline comment. You either don't want to hear about the pipeline until it is completed, or not at all. You are cherry picking what you want info about. I am saying that, and this has always been my position on this. If you are going to announce a project, you should at least know that it will be constructed. You should at least know that it will go ahead. That is my position on these announcements of projects. If you are just making announcements and amid all the pomp and pageantry, as I said, the Season mine, the tungsten and molybdenum mine, the Season mine in New Brunswick was announced in 2017. I missed a whole bunch of pomp and pageantry as well, and it hasn't been constructed till this day, for whatever reason, right? So I think I think you're not being critical as you should be about these projects if you don't ask the questions. What is different this time? And that is a question I'm asking you, BB. How about you tell me what is different this time? What is different this time? That is. If you can tell me what is different this time, maybe we can start to come to a common spot on, okay, if you can, if I can see here how the major projects office, or if maybe you tell me it's the major projects office, it is this brilliant piece of this brilliant government department that will change the game for projects getting stuck in the mud in this country. I mean, maybe we can we'll wait and we'll see what happens there. Uh, yeah. So BB says announcements create home announcements. Okay. Create a future announcements. Create home announcements. Create a future announcement. Give a plan for what's happening. Announcement. Show transparency more than the typical. Okay, so and that brings me to the second characteristic, I think, of the toxic cult I think surrounds Mark Carney, which is the fact that, and BB gives me a perfect segue into that here. When you try and criticize Mark Carney, or you try and critique some of the moves that Mark Carney is making, you don't even ask some questions. The next thing people go to is they say, well, Pierre Poilievre has no plan. Well, we're not talking about Pierre Poilievre right now. He's not the one who has made a budget, because he's not the prime minister. Look at that. He's he's not the one making these announcements about nation building projects. He's not the one who has to execute the projects. He's not the prime minister. And so when I try and critique some of the moves that Mark Carney is making, the moment I heard about as I said, I was always interested in seeing how the division of the budgeting to a capital and investment side is going to work out. And now you're seeing some of the problems that I mentioned in terms of, well, what is the definition of a capital investment, right? It is potentially something that can prevent the government from basically, it can help the government in certain ways from avoiding accountability on the spending that they're spending, right? And the parliamentary budget officer, if you missed this at the top of the show, is saying that based on their definition, the definition of the parliamentary budget office on what capital investments are, that Mark Carney's assertion in his budget 2025 that the operating side of the budget will actually be balanced is incorrect. That while the operating side of the budget will continue to the expenses, the deficit on the operating side of the budget will continue to decline over the next 5 years, it will actually not be balanced as Mark Carney as asserted. Right? And that is the fundamental problem with dividing the budget like this without maybe clear definitions of what each thing is. So, okay. So, what else? What else? What else are you guys saying? I wanna get in with your comments here. BB says, on a personal note, it is cool that you're a scientist in the battery industry. I never knew that. How long have you been doing that? I am trained as a battery scientist. That's what my education is in. I just do politics for entertainment, really. I just do it because I find it fun. But yeah, so I've my career now is going on 5 years in that industry. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I do a lot of cool things. Yeah. So that's the personal notes for those of you who want to know more about my background. That's what my background is. Yeah. So BB says they have one other thing, one other business that has 100% certainty that every one of their projects is going to be completed. Okay, if you are, think about it as this, right? You want to have, if you're gonna start a project, you want to have good, like 70 to 80% certainty that you're going to be able, well, you want to have, if in terms of recouping your money back, you want to have maybe at least 90% certainty that you're gonna make a profit, right? Or why do you think like they're struggling to find a private proponent for a new pipeline right now? It's essentially because at some point, I forget which company it was. I think it was TC Energy that put some money into I think it was the Keystone pipeline at the time. I think it was that one. I'm not too sure. That put some money into the pipeline, and then it got canceled. They lost a whole bunch of money, and now you're struggling to find private proponents for that particular project. So if you're going to build a project, you want to have some certainty. If you're going to announce the project, if you're doing a business, you want certainty that you're going to be able to complete the project and make your money back. So these announcements, again, to me, they're just announcements. They're not. They have not fundamentally changed the picture. Now, maybe over the next 5 to 6 years, we'll see a whole bunch of projects getting completed. Less of these projects will be stuck in court, as I said, and we'll see all the jobs materialize. But what if that doesn't happen? What if that doesn't happen? Mark Carney, with his budget, has put Canada in a situation where we basically do not have the leeway to respond to shocks as we might want. Like if there is, God forbid, that there's another COVID, well, we're in a very bad situation to respond to those kinds of shocks. That is simply the truth, right? So, anyways, let me proceed. Let me catch up on your comments because I feel like I've missed a lot of your comments today. Oh, we got 6 minutes to go. We got 6 minutes to go. It says name one that you can guarantee. BB says name one that you can guarantee. Okay. Dave says you're beating a dead horse. It is an expression. Come on, Dave. Come on, Dave. BB says, but you don't ask questions in good faith. Of course I do. Of course I do. I am asking what I think everybody should be asking, in my opinion. What is different this time? If these projects are not new, what is McCartney doing that is so fundamentally different from what has been done for years and has failed? That is all I'm asking. I'm not saying, oh, the man has no right. He shouldn't be able to announce projects. He shouldn't. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I am just saying we have. The question I'm asking is, okay. So Just Eman comes in and says, what did you miss? Oh, here's what you missed. The parliamentary budget officer has just put out a bit of some analysis on McCartney's budgets, and the parliamentary budget officer is saying that, well, based on McCartney's categorization of what capital investments is, that, well, the parliamentary budget officer is saying he does not agree with Mark Carney's categorization of what capital investments is, and that based on the definition that the Parliamentary Budget Office recognizes, based on their definition, Mark Carney's assertion that the operating side of the budget will be balanced by 2028-29 is unlikely to happen. Okay, and that leads me to ask certain questions of Mark Carney, in the sense that, yeah, he has brought in all these new things. We're dividing the budget now into capital investments and an operating side. We have different opinions on whether that is what that means for government spending going forward and accountability in the government. All those things. But also, you can extend that to things like the nation building projects, where Mark Carney is essentially re-announcing a whole bunch of projects, because a lot of these projects are not new. And in fact, by their own admission, the Carney government and the minister, Tim Hodgson, was on CBC this week and admitted that, yes, that is their strategy. Their fundamental strategy is they want to focus on getting projects over the line. And I said, as Pierre Poilievre rightly asked this week, the Season Mine was a project that was that was announced at some point in 2017 by Dominic Leblanc. And at the time, they said, well, we're going to make sure that this project gets completed because it is important for Canada. Fast forward 8 years later, the Carney government, with Dominic Leblanc still in cabinet, is re-announcing said project. What is different this time? And so I am saying that there is a group of toxic Carney liberals right now that refuse to ask the questions that are important, because it's Carney, and the moment you start to critique Mark Carney on some of these things, as I said, like the fact that, well, there's not much clarity in the way the budget has been created with these capital investments and the operating side of the budgets. The definitions are a bit murky sometimes. Or that these nation building projects, well, we don't know if they're even going to get completed, because all Mark Carney is doing when he sends these projects to the major projects office is all he's doing is sending it to an office. It doesn't mean they're approved. It doesn't mean they will get built. It doesn't mean that they will ever get completed. It doesn't mean they will get completed in time for us to meet this moment that this country is in, right? And so what you're missing there, as I said, the first trait, I think, of toxic Carney liberals is to say everything is fine. Mark Carney is an economist, so we trust him for that reason. You have to be able to ask the questions, to critique what is being said to you. The second trait of these toxic Carney liberals is to say that, well, it doesn't matter what Mark Carney says because Pierre Poilievre has no plan. Well, Pierre Poilievre is not the government right now. He's not. So we're not talking about Pierre Poilievre when we critique Mark Carney's moves, or when we critique his budget, or when we critique his policies. We're not talking about Pierre Poilievre. We're talking about Mark Carney. Anyways, so that's what you missed, Justin, man. We're just having it out on those particular issues. I said that there are toxic Carney followers right now, people who just want to follow the leader and refuse to ask the questions that they should be asking. That is, I want to shine the light on that today, because yes, I've on this show, not on the live show, but on this channel, called out toxic Poilievre followers as well, because these are people who blindly follow Pierre Poilievre without asking the required questions of, can he actually deliver on some of the things that he's promising, right? So anyways, okay. What BV says COVID is different. Well, COVID is one example, right? A crazy American president that we might talk about briefly before we leave today, actually, because it's 5 and I should be rounding up. A crazy American president is also a. It's not necessary. You might say a crazy American president is a once in a lifetime thing that doesn't happen often. Well, you will. It will surprise you to know that when Donald Trump applied the lumber tariffs, it's not like what's his face. It's not like it's not like when It's not like when Joe Biden came into office that he decided to roll back the tariffs on lumber. To my knowledge, I think Joe Biden even increased the to my knowledge, Joe Biden actually increased the tariffs on lumber, and now obviously Donald Trump is doing some of the crazy things he's doing right now. Tony Comisio says, and yet Kanye has adopted a few of Pierre Poilievre's policies. That is that is actually quite ironic. I know, right? Yeah. Anyways, big debate today with you guys. Obviously, BB and Dave are very much on the side of the liberal side of the debate here. Just Iman says that's fair, to be honest. Yeah. Where else? What else am I missing here? Oh, BB says I can mention PP, but no one else can. I didn't say you can't. I just said you should know when to bring up PP. And you shouldn't bring up PP when the discussion is not about PP. When we're talking about nation building projects, what does that have to do with Pierre Polyev? Absolutely nothing. So to say, oh, Polyev has no plan, and when you say Polyev has no plan, when we're talking about Mark Carney's nation building projects, then what is your point? Anyways, I want to round up because we're getting close to this. Oh boy, Eric Lavoie says I stand behind PP. He lead us like he will lead us. I imagine that's what you're trying to say. He will lead us like Harper did. Take care, BB. He will lead us like Harper did. Okay, so, I don't know that. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, so Dave, I'm actually struggling here. I don't know if you're a liberal or a conservative, Dave. Dave says exactly, Eric. Thank you. Another economic boom. I don't know if you're being sarcastic or if you're actually supporting the assertion that a leader like Stephen Harper is needed again. I'm not too sure. Anyways, as we round up the show today, spirited debate. As I said, I think that we need to be able to ask. We should ask questions. I think it is highly toxic for people to sit there and say, because Marconi is an economist, then we have to trust every single move he makes when he is, well, when we haven't seen evidence to the fact that we should. Right? I want to see. Maybe says Harper was a hack. Of course, of course. I wouldn't say I expected. I wouldn't say I expected you to say anything different. Dave says Harper led a boom, and Carney will too. Maybe he will, and I would. It would. It would. It would. It would make me. It would fill me with a lot of happiness if McCartney turns out to be the rousing success that a lot of people have faith that he will. I am not invested in McCartney failing. I want him to succeed because I think if there's more jobs in this country for young people coming up like me, and we can afford to buy a home and all those kinds of things, it's for the good of everybody. It's good for everybody, right? So I want to see that. I don't want McCartney to fail by any chance. And yes, you're right. We should ask questions in good faith. And I hope you could see that I am asking the questions in good faith and not as a gotcha, not as a, oh, Carney is all the way bad, he's terrible, is all these things. I am asking the questions because I think it is important for us to especially in the case of the nation building projects, for us to know that these projects are they going to actually happen? I think that is important. Anyways, last thing I'll say before I leave today. Donald Trump recently dropped tariffs on some food imports, some beef. I think it was coffee as well, some grains, those kinds of things. See you next week, Braveheart. And some of the countries that are affected include El Salvador, Argentina, and Guatemala. And this is important for Canada because this is important for Canada because it for the first time we see Trump and the Trump administration actually admits that their tariffs might be increasing prices for American citizens, right? And the justification that the Trump administration is putting out for dropping these tariffs now, well, obviously faced with the fact that food prices are going up in the United States, the justification for dropping these tariffs now is that, well, you know the well, one, these countries, Argentina, El Salvador, and Guatemala, already have framework agreements with the United States, and also they make food products that the United States does not make locally. Now, I would have imagined that they would. Okay, so BB says they did not admit that. No, they did not. They did not. They did not. They did not say that. You're right. I should be more clear with what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they, in pulling back the tariffs in the face of increasing prices, it was okay. Dave says, in Canada, you're best not to ask questions and let the monarch lead us. Okay. Anyways, BB, we're gonna launch into another argument. But my point here, as I sign out today, is this: the if as it starts to become more obvious that these tariffs are increasing prices, and I imagine it was obvious to us from the start that these tariffs are going to increase prices on American citizens. But hopefully, as it starts to become more obvious to these people that these tariffs are a tax on American citizens, maybe it will provide some leeway for negotiations, and maybe it might make them a little bit more reasonable in actually opening up to good faith negotiations with Canada, which hopefully will lead to a sensible deal. Anyways, that is why I bring that up today. I think that is good news in some regard. But we'll see how that goes. Anyways, I want to roll the credits for today. We've gone quite a bit over the allotted time for the live show. Roll the credits. Thank you, BB, Dave Owen. Who else commented today? Eric Lavoy, Just Eman. Just Eman is one of my OG subscribers as well. I remember Just Eman from how many months ago did you follow me? I don't even remember, but I remember seeing your name. Maybe you don't know, but I pay attention when you guys subscribe. Anyways, Tony Camizo, thank you for the comments today. Who else am I missing? Braveheart, and I think R was also here today. Yeah, and that is everybody. So thank you guys for joining me today. If something absolutely groundbreaking happens over the course of the week, I will be live during the week. Usually I work during the week, so that's why I try not to come live. But if something phenomenal happens, I'll come on live. Obviously there is the budget votes. If something spectacular happens on Monday and the budget vote fails for some reason, I don't expect that to happen. I'll be live to talk about it. If something phenomenal happens, like maybe a certain conservative MP goes and jumps ship and joins the liberals, because crazy things have been happening, right? Uh, if Dave says, where can I find you? You can always email me. So if you look on the channel profile, I have an email there. There's the voice.inquiries@gmail.com. I'm also on TikTok at Wolf of Young Street Pod. I'm also on Instagram, but I'm mostly active on TikTok and on YouTube. And you can also email me. Okay, all these things, all in all these places, I'm available to talk to you guys. And if you're new to the channel, so if this is your first time here, please subscribe, drop a like on the video, invite your friends over. I'm here every Sunday having great discussions with you guys. Sometimes we have spirited debates where I tell you guys who are Carney supporters that I tell you guys not to be toxic. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Everybody's welcome here, okay? Everybody's welcome. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.